tell me a bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about some questions, and then yeah,
Hmm.
that sounds good.
Always talking about yourself is the tough part usually.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know, Greg Appleyard, born and raised in Strathmore. Um, went to university in Calgary and started working cattle and feed yards right out of school. Um, 10 years in, had the opportunity to buy the feed yard and owned that feed yard for 10 years and made relationships, I guess, all over North America. And and yeah, I left Catalan in 2013, sold my shares of the business, and kind of started a home office to get in the cattle business. And then we decided or determined that we were going to start almost like a virtual feed yard mentality of where we would manage cattle around Western Canada for grain farmers or colonies or whatever, and charged a fee, and almost like a head office for people that did a really good job of raising cattle, but didn't really want to deal with the paperwork or the hedging or any of that stuff. And yeah, it's evolved into a lot more order buying than I ever expected at first. There was more of a need there than I ever thought, or a demand. And so we buy a lot of cattle for a lot of people around North America, Canada, and the US, and for ourselves. And yeah, that's kind of the base of where Agris Solutions is right now at this point in time.
perfect. Thanks, Greg. So, just kind of a fairly open-ended question to start it. Where do you see the cattle industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
Um, the cattle industry continues to consolidate. I think what's happened, and you think ever since BSE, the losses and the difference between the have and have nots in the industry are people get certain pricing or grids or ability to sell animals higher than other people. And what it's done is consolidated the people who have a competitive advantage to continue to get bigger, while the smaller guys who are selling 10 loads a year, 20 loads a year, just don't have the same competitive advantage. So I think the older generation, they'll feed cattle as an addiction until they retire. But for the next generation, if you really do the math on cattle feeding, it hasn't been the best business in the world. And so I still view that there's going to be considered a great amount of consolidation, but I'm also concerned about how high we've got in the current marketplace, that I do feel that when this market completely corrects, it's going to take another group of people out. And some of those traditional people, I've never seen, or I've never felt as much risk in our business as we do right now.
Mhm. So, what do you think we could kind of do to avoid that risk, maybe?
I think the tools are all there. I think it goes back to, the ranchers or the old order buyers that sell flip phones, for example, right? It's not that they don't have the tools and all this technology out there. It's they choose not to use it,
Mhm.
or choose to do what they've always done. And I view that the same as a cattle business. I think people still are very traditional in that, I've owned these cattle for 3 straight years, I'm going to buy them again. Well, there's no technology or professionalism or mathematics put into, do I even have a chance? And so many people can lose money on what they buy before they even take delivery of them.
Mhm.
And so I do feel that Canada, even more than the US, that the tools are there, but we are so traditional that we don't react properly, and we're not, especially like CPIP that the government offers, and options or fixed price contracts. People just don't do enough of them. They always feel like they're leaving something on the table.
Mhm.
And so I think the tools are there for them to protect themselves. And in Canada, income tax still drives a big portion of our industry.
Yep.
and why people feed cattle. And in the US, they can't write off the cattle. They can only write off the feed against income. So we do have an inflated value for animals here at times of the year as well.
So with that, do we see any effects of American cattle coming into Canada?
I think crossbreds will continue to come just because of the volume that's available. I think feeder cattle will come in places, and we just have a competitive feed advantage at this point. So especially like those Montana cattle, I think there's advantages of those cattle coming up to be grown as fresh calves before they go east or west. Do I think it's, again, it goes back to that traditional side. There's a certain amount of that will always happen, but I don't see it as any greater than it has been in the past. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, every Holstein in the world seemed to come up here. And last year it turned into crossbreds that were coming across the border. And VRP 2 years ago was very, very big. And last year, very, very big in cattle from, Idaho, Oregon, California, Montana to fill their yards. So, but I do not, I don't expect that to get any greater than we already are.
Mhm. So then, kind of with the cattle that are coming up here, is there any because I know you guys do a lot of business down in the States as well. Is there any health concerns or anything that you think could come up to Canada from cattle from the States or no?
You say heifers?
Health concerns?
Oh, health concerns? No.
No.
No, I have to be careful. I've done it a long time moving cattle back and forth, and I've never been involved in one. But again, vets are inspecting going in each direction. Again, if we're bringing something up, it's usually the higher quality stuff. It's not like you buy a bunch of seconds and thirds to move either direction.
Yeah.
It's usually always the cream moving. So I'm sure there's some there that I'm not accounting for, but it's not as big a concern. It's not a current concern of mine.
Yeah. Okay. And then kind of last question I really do have, kind of with in terms of the trucking rules that are kind of trying to be pushed, do you see any problems that could transpire into the livestock transportation with that?
Yeah, I think on the buy side, we started seeing it last year before the electronic IDs, but or electronic you know what I'm talking about, where those trucks will just actually shut down on these guys. A lot of orders we get now, you can buy as many cattle as you have trucks for.
Yeah.
Or can deliver timely. I think in certain seasons and certain years now, I think between reduction of truck drivers available and how hard it is for these guys to get their licenses, to now the fact of the e-logs and being able to move cattle the same distances. And all it takes is, I don't know, if you deliver, especially like the milk run type cattle where you're in 4 feed yards and you have an issue somewhere,
yeah,
and that clock's against you, and right, you have 15 minutes or some stupid amount of time before you get to the last stop. Like that's the stuff that drives me insane with all this.
Yeah.
I do think we need to do a better job of probably creating like a committee for trucking to lobby and express that it's not like hauling a load of furniture. It is perishable, and there is an animal welfare issue surrounding some of this. There is exemptions in the US and you can get permits and things to get around, but Canada has not announced any to my knowledge at this point. So the heavier and heavier we're regulating our trucking industries continue to concern me when we're already in a shortage. So like in our own business, we've invested greater and greater in trucks and drivers because we don't want our hiccup or our reason for not being able to grow or move or expand in that we don't have trucks.
Yeah.
But no, it's a real concern and a real issue. I just don't think anyone really knows what we're getting into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem that should be kind of brought up as a higher talked about subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the trucking company, especially like at the LMAC meetings, they didn't really know what to say because first off, they don't really know what the solution is. But it's going to get into doing more truck switches and things like where the trailer keeps moving, but the trucks are switching at locations, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have drop locations. And I don't know how that works with multiple drivers and stuff as well. Like one thing about the trucking industry, and especially the cattle trucking industry, you always kind of find ways to work your way through. Like I don't know if you know much about this, but all these guys are buying like the 1990s trucks and stuff, the old
Yeah.
motors, right? So they're not they can't be managed that way. So, and I think that's why you see these trucks getting, like if you're trying to buy a 1990, it's more money than the 2000 now.
Yeah.
And it all gets into e-log exemptions and motor exemptions. So anyhow, it just seems like we're getting more and more like Europe, where we're continuing to overregulate ourselves without probably enough industry standing up to it.
Mhm.
And I don't know. You always think somebody else is going to fight your fights too, to be honest, including myself. And then you get yourself put in a corner.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I know that we could probably keep going with the interview, but we've kind of passed the time limit. And yeah, I really appreciate your time, and it
Yeah,
was
for sure.
it was really educational and great talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions, you can send me a text or whatever, and I can help you out there.
Okay, perfect. Thank
All
you.
right. Nice
Yep.
meeting you.
It was nice meeting you too.
Yeah,
Have a
talk
good
to you
day.
later.